Good morning, friends. Welcome to another section of With All Your Rights. Today is the second segment of a series of videos that we're making about the equal rights of U.S. citizens in the island of Puerto Rico. We have picked this beautiful location, which is the Capitol building of Puerto Rico. As you can see, it's flying both the American flag and the Puerto Rico flag. Now, I would title today's section, A More Perfect Union. Why? Because it's in the preamble of the U.S. Constitution. Now, for over 100 years, the American flag has been flown next to the Puerto Rico flag all over Puerto Rico. This is a U.S. territory subject to federal laws and the U.S. Federal jurisdiction. However, for U.S. citizens living in Puerto Rico, that perfect union has not yet materialized. The civil rights movement began in the 1950s and 1960s as a struggle for African Americans to try to reach equal justice under law and to end segregation. This all began with the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that banned segregation in public schools. These events recently were called to attention in 2020 with the apparent murder of George Floyd at the hands of police while he was being detained by police for arrest. It revived this struggle of African Americans to end what seems to be a systemic racism and discrimination against African Americans, and that gave birth to recent movements of civil rights, such as Black Lives Matters. Now, there are other civil rights movements. We have a movement for women's rights. We have the movement for the gay and lesbian and transgender community. We have this situation that's happening right now with U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico, which we believe should be something that should be called to attention, because it's an issue of civil rights, fundamental rights. There should be no U.S. citizens that are not allowed to participate in federal election of federal elected officials, or should be excluded from federal funded programs, especially if they're U.S. citizens, as Puerto Rico citizens have been for over 100 years. Behind me is a memorial monument dedicated to thousands of Puerto Rico U.S. citizens that have sacrificed their lives protecting the American flag and freedom and democracy here in Puerto Rico and the United States. I ask Congress to think about the sacrifice these men and women pay the next time they appropriate funds for federal programs and they choose to exclude U.S. citizens from Puerto Rico. Well, friends, what are some of the things that we can do as Americans to help understand the struggle for equal justice and equal rights under the law for U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico? We can start by educating. Education is important. Educating the people on the mainland, educating the people on the island about this differences between what happens to U.S. citizens in the state as opposed to what's going on with U.S. citizens on the island of Puerto Rico. To advocacy, meeting with congressmen, sending information, trying to help them understand the situation of disparity between U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico and U.S. citizens on the mainland, and obviously litigation. Taking cases to court, taking civil actions that are necessary to try to get the court to help solve some of these issues that are happening. Now, why is this important? Because we want to expose and rectify the inequalities in terms of fundamental rights of U.S. citizens in the mainland and Puerto Rico, and we want to help people in Congress understand the situation so that perhaps in the future we can finally build a more perfect union. Thank you for watching.